All right, class. So today we're diving into a major glow up in farming, the second agricultural revolution. So imagine if farming had an upgrade, like when the iPhone went from having a home button to Face ID. This revolution wasn't just about growing more food, it changed everything: cities, jobs, and even what people ate. And trust me, if it hadn't happened, some of y'all would not be able to enjoy your Chick-fil-A nuggets as easily as you do today. So, we're going to be talking about new technology and increased food production in the second agricultural revolution and how it led to better diets, longer life expectancies, and more people available for work in factories. All right, so we're talking the 1700s and the 1800s, right when the Industrial Revolution was blowing up. And this is when people started to make machines that did jobs faster than one individual person could by hand. So imagine if you had to text only using one finger instead of using both thumbs. That's the difference between farming before and after this revolution. So, with better farming techniques, people live longer, they ate better, and some moved to cities where they could work in factories instead of plowing the fields all day long. All right, so we're going to talk about the second agricultural revolution, but to really understand what happened, we also need to look at two other big changes that were going on at the exact same time: the second industrial revolution and the second urban revolution. So think of it like this: these three revolutions were happening side by side, and they were all connected. Each one was influenced by the others, and together they completely changed how people lived, worked, and got their food. So the second agricultural revolution happened mostly in the 1700s and the 1800s. Farmers started using better tools like the steel plow and mechanical seed drill, which made farming much faster and more productive. They also began using smarter techniques like crop rotation and selective breeding of animals to get more food from their land. All of this meant that farms could feed a lot more people. Around the same time, the second industrial revolution was taking off, and you'll hear a lot about this in your U.S. history class when you reach 11th grade. So the second industrial revolution was taking off, and especially in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And this is when new machines were invented for factories and for farms. Machines like tractors, threshers, they all helped farmers grow even more food with fewer workers. Trains and refrigerated rail cars also made it easier to transport food to cities that were really far away. So, because farms didn't need as many workers anymore, a lot of the people moved from the countryside to cities and they found new jobs in factories. That brings us to the second urban revolution. So, this is when cities started to grow really fast because of all the factory jobs that were available. Cities became places where goods were made and sold, and more people living in the cities meant more mouths to feed. And this created a kind of cycle. So, farms produced food, cities needed the food, and the new technology helped connect the two. So, these three revolutions, agricultural, industrial, and urban, all work together. Farmers used the better tools and techniques, and the cities got bigger and hungrier, and technology helped everything move faster, more efficiently, and together they helped create a modern world that we live in today. Okay, so before this, farms were basically sharing is caring type of system. Everyone farmed together on a common land, but then rich landowners in England were like, nah, this is my land now. And they fenced off their farms. Think of it like putting a password on your Wi Fi so no one else can use it. The small farmers got kicked out, and what that meant was that they had to find new jobs. And many of them ended up working in cities. In factories. So, sound familiar? Of course. It's kind of like how Miami keeps building condos and it keeps pushing out the older neighborhoods. Okay, so technological advancements. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Norfolk four-field system. And you know how when you eat at Chick-fil-A too many days in a row, you start craving something else? That's kind of what was happening to the soil. Farmers kept growing the same crop and the soil got tired. The Norfolk four-field system, sorry, that's a tongue twister, was fixed by rotating the crops each year. So the soil stayed rich, and one year they would grow wheat, the next it would be turnips, and then barley, and then clover, and boom, more food, happier soil, and better farming. So the seed drill and then the mechanical reaper. So before the seed drill, farmers were basically throwing seeds on the ground, hoping that they would grow. Kind of like when you throw bird seed and expect a petting zoo to just appear. The seed drill made sure that seeds were planted at just the right depth and distance, increasing crop success. So when the mechanical reaper came along, cutting the wheat super fast, kind of like the way that Publix can make a sub in 2 minutes, it made everything work a lot better. And everyone was able to use these different technological advancements to advance farming. All right, so next up, South Florida, imagine this. So cows are just walking around wherever they want, getting into everybody's business. And that what was happening before barbed wire. Barbed wire helped keep livestock in designated areas. So like fences around a soccer field, they kind of work to make sure that no animal that was supposed to be contained in a certain area was off getting into trouble or going into places that they shouldn't be going into. The next one, the iron plow. So this thing is strong enough to break through soil so farmers could grow even more food. So sometimes when you're going ahead and you're trying to dig, it doesn't really work as easily because the soil or the ground becomes really tough. And the iron plow breaks through that, making it a lot easier to plant seeds and actually allow the seeds to get to soil where they need to grow. All right, so you know how dog breeders mix breeds to get certain traits like a golden doodle? That's kind of what farmers started doing with livestock. They bred the strongest, fattest animals together and made them even better versions. Plus, they started using fertilizers like protein shakes and for plants to help crops grow bigger and faster. All right, so picture this. Farmers used to store grain in piles on the ground where rats and rain ruined everything. Then, boom, grain elevators were invented. These were basically giant storage towers, like a grain version of an Amazon warehouse. Um, and it kind of made sure that it was protected and it kind of avoided the issues of spoiling because of the weather or because of any sort of creatures that were getting into it and ruining it. Also, the irrigation improved. So think of it like farmers were getting access to a giant sprinkler system instead of depending on rain. So that meant more food and less waste. All right, so what did this all mean? More food, better diets, and longer life expectancies, and a population boom. So more people meant more factory workers, and cities grew fast. But fun fact, before all of this, people spent about 60% of their money on food. After these changes, it dropped to 36%. That's a difference between eating out once a month versus hitting Chipotle twice a week. Okay, so let's bring this home. Why does this matter for us? South Florida is built on on agriculture. Everglades soil helped us make the major producers of sugar, tomatoes, and tropical fruits. So without farming innovations, your morning orange juice or cafecito wouldn't exist. The second agricultural revolution set the stage for modern farming and the global trade, which impacts everything from the food in your fridge to the economy of Miami. So now we'll go ahead and make sure that you answer your review questions, finish your reflection questions in your packet. And if you have any questions, write them down in the margins on your packet and make sure to ask me when I see you guys again in class. And I will see you guys for the next video.